sorry, and then it's like you start the video on a weird face. I've done a lot of audio editing recently.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, big sister. Okay. always with the advice, naturally so. Anyway, I think the last time we did a podcast was my first attempt at a podcast, which was
Yes.
a
long time ago.
A long time ago. Very, very long time ago. However, this time round is slightly different because quite a few things have changed. We won't go into the 2020 shenanigans, but there were some good things that came out of the shenanigans. Some very good things. I was trying to think about sort of like a optimal angle for this, and what I kind of boiled down to.
Yes, Aji. Yeah, I turned it off so it couldn't ring in here. Because Jacob's recording a video. Jacob's recording a video. I turned the plug off in here so that it wouldn't ring in here. Does it turn the whole phone off?
It said there's no power.
Yeah, I know. I turned it off.
Same thing on that phone as well?
No, I turned it off.
Oh.
Because Jacob's recording, and if the phone goes off while he's recording, then it ruins the whole audio.
I think if you haven't noticed by now.
Yes, I know. I turned it off.
I think, dear viewers, if you haven't realised by now, me and my sister are at my grandma's house.
Oh, it turns the whole thing off? Yeah. Oh, wait, I turn it back on.
Oh yeah, don't turn the whole bass off, because this is, look, all of this is plugged into that now.
No, I just turned one plug off, Jacob.
Oh.
Yeah, it's on, Aji.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so dear viewers, if you haven't realised by now, me and my sister are at my grandma's house. Anyway, what I was saying, the angle that I was kind of thinking about to come to this just chat with, what am I curious about?
Okay.
So basically, I have come up with some questions because I'm like, what am I actually curious about?
Okay.
But
you did your homework. Okay.
Well, it's not to be dogmatic. It's just so there's some kind of
It was fine, Jacob.
an idea, and then we can go off piste if need be. And yeah, don't judge me for like not having the boom mics.
Stands.
The boom stands for the microphones. I'll get to it. So yeah, as long as the sound quality is good, it's fine. But the first thing the main question is like you made a human.
I did. Well, I had some help. Yes, I had some help, and then I grew the human.
Yeah, I know. So the first thing is just like how do you feel being like a newly minted mum now? Like, it's because the last time we talked, that was definitely not the situation.
Well, when we did our last podcast, that was
just about allergy talks. That was just allergy. That was just talking about allergies and things like that, and that was a massively different time. But like, how does it? Essentially, just how does it feel
to be a mum?
To be a new mum? Yeah.
I think one of the things about being a new mum is that there are so many emotions and feelings that you get, and they change, and then you also don't always have time to process the emotions because you're tired, and then you have this tiny human that you have to look after, so you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there are no breaks. So I love being a mum. First of all, I love being a mum. I think the transition to motherhood, to knowing how to cope, how it's changed your identity. or how it's changed your identity in unexpected ways, but then also coming to terms with the way you did think it would change your identity has had its challenges. And when you're sleep deprived, everything is so much harder as well. And because I've been exclusively breastfeeding as well, so we didn't use formula. He's not weaned onto a bottle of dairy milk or formula or anything. As a toddler, I'm still breastfeeding, and then he eats loads anyway. Now, I think that first year is it can be quite overwhelming in the sheer amount you are needed, and that can be quite, well, I think Grant, my husband, described it as quite smothering. You are kind of smothered by your baby in a way, but then you need to be there and you want to be there. It's kind of this real pulling of emotions, because as everyone has had those days where they're overwhelmed with work, for example, you just need a break from it sometimes. But with your child, that break is either not able to happen, or you need half an hour, or half an hour would be an amazing break, but maybe you only get 5 or 10 minutes, because going to the toilet by yourself is a break sometimes, because sometimes you need to take your baby to the toilet because they just need you, or they need feeding or something. They just come with you. It's safer for them to be with you as well. So those small private personal moments, you do not have them. Like, you do not have a personal life anymore, especially in that first year. Since Marcus started, well, he's older, he's eating a lot more, and he's more capable.
About 1.5.
He's 18 months now. Yeah, he's 18 months now. Now he's more capable. He doesn't need me to be with him every hour of the day or every 2 hours. Like, he can be without me for 4 or 5 hours if it was needed.
I think part of that is also because both of you are very independent people, and you were very aware that you wanted to help him get to that space.
Yeah, and he's not there yet, but and he won't get there for a while. But he's on his way. But I think it's also
in a healthy way, though. It's not like a dysfunctional version of needing parents, because there's a dysfunctional version of that.
Yeah,
and it's not that. It's just the natural. I'm 18 months old. I need my parents kind of thing. But I can still play by myself when I feel okay to do so.
Yeah, and we encourage him to play by himself as well. We encourage him to, if he can do something, to do it by himself, to build his skills, to build his confidence, to do those things.
Yeah.
By modelling those skills, those actions, as the way we want him to do them as much as possible. So it's, Grant and I always, we talked about what type of parents we wanted to be, how we'd want to raise our children before we had a baby. We talked about it hypothetically in the very beginning, and we'd kind of have scenarios, or there would be situations that we came up against with friends, with family, just we'd see in the world, and we'd discuss them and think, well, what would we do? How would we want to raise a child? And now that we have a child, we're doing it. We're adapting as Marcus grows. I'm doing a lot of learning and reading about, how can I learn about what Marcus is going through so that I can do my best as a mum. It does help that I work for myself and I only work part-time. So one of the things that Grant, Han, I did decide is that we wanted a traditional marriage.
Right.
And we would take on those traditional roles. And I have come across books, blogs, social media accounts where people say that, becoming a mother, you're succumbing to those gender stereotypes, you're succumbing to the patriarchy. And actually, I say no. I say it's a division of labor. So if, for example, I was thinking about it this way, if you have a work project, for example, or if you're studying, you have a uni project, school project, you're going to have different aspects of that project that need to be done. And you are going to take on those different roles, those different job responsibilities in order to get this end product created by a certain date. Now, with a child, that's a bit different. But a child needs a huge amount of looking after, especially in the first year. But they still need a lot in the first 2 years. And for a while afterwards, the friends I have with older children, they need you. You are their parents. You are their main source of protection, love, guardianship, and learning. So we decided we wanted those traditional roles because that would be best for our family. It also came from a financial point of view that we knew that Grant's, because we're both self-employed, we both run our own businesses, he had the greater earning potential. So it was practical as well. And it would be cheaper for us if I stayed home and looked after Marcus. Like, I didn't get maternity leave. My maternity leave was the maternity leave pay. My maternity leave pay was what I had earned in the previous year.
Yeah.
And I had I had managed to build some passive income as well.
Right.
Now, working during the first year during maternity leave is not fun, and there were points I got some friends to help me because I really just couldn't handle it because I was too sleep deprived. But dividing those roles is not succumbing to the patriarchy. It's division of labour, divide and conquer, because you're going to be exhausted. We also decided that no, Grant would sleep in our bedroom and I would sleep in Marcus's room, the nursery, so that he could get sleep. Right. So Grant has not joined in with night nursing, anything like that, because we needed his brain to function fully so that he could earn money for our family.
Right.
And that...
So, yeah, well, one of the key things there, these are all conscious choices.
Yes.
So it was, this is our situation. This is what we feel like would be best for our family. Mm-hmm. This is the choice we're going to make. Obviously, like, the whole patriarchy part of the conversation, just societally, that's a it's not a separate thing, but that's a whole other conversation. People need to take into account stages of consciousness, and integral theory really helps with that and understanding where the root of that is. Yeah, Ken Wilber actually said in his book A Brief History of Everything, the societal shift actually happened when the plow was invented. Because before the plow was invented, men went out and hunted, and then women were in the fields.
Yeah.
But when the plow was invented, it was too heavy stereotypically for women so men went in the fields. And then when men went into the fields, women went indoors. But that was a bit of a shit end of the stick, because they were out hunting and having fun with the boys, and then they were in the fields and they were like, this fucking sucks. Because it's not as cool as like going out and sneaking around and like shooting deer with bows and arrows and stuff. So they didn't exactly have a great time with that shift, but it needed to happen. And then because society was a little bit more matriarchal prior to that point, and then things started to shift, and then God got involved in terms of having a male pronoun, and then that's when things started to kind of get to this point. But at the same time, like, it's not just a blank statement. There's aspects of it that are dysfunctional, and there are aspects of it that actually this is a traditional role and this actually works. As Ken Wilber said, no one's smart enough to produce 100% error. So there needs to be a discerning mind, and that's where, like, stages of consciousness, that's why they're saying transcend but include. Transcend to the, like, currently the culture war we have is in integral theory. There's first tier consciousness, second tier consciousness, and then third tier. Third tier would be your sages. They're the people that typically create traditions. They're very, very rare. That's like a Jesus or a Buddha, or the people that literally are here to show what unconditional love means. That's those kinds of people. They're 0.1% of the 1% that are at third tier.
Right.
First tier would be, so everyone starts at a lower stage, and then the tip of first tier is actually what would the color would be associated with, that is green, which
Okay.
would be postmodern. The one just below that would be orange, which is kind of like the capitalist achiever self. The problem with first tier is people in first tier consciousness can't take the role of other.
Okay.
So the problem we have is we have postmodern, which would be the left side of the political spectrum, denying the truths of orange, capitalist, the scientific, materialist facts, which would be more the right side of the political spectrum. Further down the right side of the political spectrum is a little bit below that, which could either be called amber or blue, which is more just traditional hierarchy, and that would be sort of your sort of Christian fundamentalists.
Okay.
And when I say hierarchy, there are also, in integral theory, there are also the distinction between two types of hierarchy: dominator hierarchies, Nazi Germany, or growth hierarchies. Simple example: beginner class, intermediate class, advanced class. You slowly move through those ranks. But if you can't take the role of other, you can't see the truth in what each person's doing. So people are at each other's throats. So what we have now is green on a hamster wheel of hate with orange on a hamster wheel of hate with green, because there are certain scientific facts, like people need to make money. There are certain sort of laws of business that work. But at the same time, green, it's good to do that without stepping on people or being an arsehole.
Yeah.
But if you transcend but you completely deny, then you just blow out all the facts as well. We need to integrate both, and that's where you can jump to second tier, which is integral holistic.
Yeah.
Which is where you have no one smart enough to produce 100% error. And that's where you have, okay, in their family, it works in a more traditional role. For us, all right, maybe that's the point.
Yeah,
so
no, because this is what works for us. Now, not every family can do a one-income household. Because mothers work. And also there's the thing that mums I like working.
Yeah.
I like to work.
Yeah.
But there's because being a mum, being so required, I don't get that space to think. Like the friends I have, the other mums whose babies are around the same age as my son, pretty much all of them have gone back to work.
Yeah.
And they've really enjoyed it, having that time and that space. It's not just the income side of things. And then one of the other things is that, well, if you're working employed by a company, you get maternity leave as well.
Yeah.
I mean, different companies have their different rules of how that works.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with parenting, with motherhood. There isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah.
But I think the point I'm making with it's not patriarchy by becoming a mother and then staying at home.
Yeah.
Because those roles are not equal, especially in the beginning when, and even your child will need you, their mum, more in some respects than they need dad at certain times.
Here's where I would, here's a thought that could make the sort of holistic distinction. You could say it is if it's not your choice. If you're forced to. If someone forces you to do it and you don't want to do that, then you could say maybe it is. Because then it, but if it's your choice, it's not. That's you could, I mean, obviously that needs fleshing out as an idea, but there needs to be a distinction between whether it's someone's choice or not. It's not a blank statement.
To be
like, if someone chooses, I want to be more of a stay-at-home mum, whether it's patriarchy or not, the distinction needs to be made whether it's my choice to stay home and I want to stay home, or whether someone else is forcing you to stay home.
Yeah,
obviously, as I said, that idea needs to be fleshed out, and that's a whole other sort of rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think
so. But before we kind of go down that route, I wanted to keep it a bit more on you. So, like, Because that
Just leave that bomb there, why don't you? Ticking time bomb.
Well, this is where integral theory helps all of us. But the next bit I wanted to just go on to was aside from the sleep deprivation, which I can't even imagine.
No. Imagine
what's been the hard, aside from the sleep deprivation, and you can feel free to talk about it because it's not a small thing. What's been the hardest part that you've found so far? So you can talk about the sleep deprivation first.
Well, no,
seeing as you haven't actually had, seeing as I basically described it as like, oh, you haven't really slept for a year.
yes, a year and a half. No,
Well, properly,
almost 2
anyway.
years.
You've basically just napped for a year and a half.
No, a bit longer than that because you wake up multiple times when you're pregnant as well.
Yeah, well, 2 years.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
You've been dozing and napping for 2 years. You haven't really slept for 2
no,
years.
the longest I've slept in one go is about 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
In the last almost 2 years. Yeah, so sleep deprivation is an exacerbating factor as well.
Right.
Yeah, the sleep deprivation is hard. It's not as hard as it used to be, and there were ways to manage that. I think one of the most difficult things is adapting when your baby changes, because the changes happen so constantly
Right.
that once you get into a good routine with them, something else happens and everything changes again. And I think one of the things that happens first time round is that you cannot fully comprehend the amount things change. And like humans, we like routine, we like stability, and there's
Oh yeah, we need it.
yeah, but when you have a tiny baby,
You ain't got it.
no, I mean there's stability in the fact, hopefully, that you have a home, you've got food, etc., like that. There's stability in the fact that you know things are going to change, but you don't know what's going to change, when it's going to change, and how it's going to affect you. And sometimes the first year they literally, it's like every month that they go through something, every 6 weeks. And for Marcus, whenever he went through something, it affected his sleep, which is brutal. So, like, the worst ones were when he went through the 4-month sleep progression, then I think it was the 9-10 month sleep regression. Those were the most brutal. And then there were other times that he would wake up every hour at night.
Yeah.
So I was sleeping for like half an hour, 40 minutes, and then I was awake. So I wasn't getting any REM sleep.
Yeah.
And it would happen for 10 days consecutively.
And you lost your mind.
A little bit, yeah. I was starting to lose it. And that really takes a toll on a relationship as well. I mean, Grant and I had been together for 9 years before Marcus was born. So it's not like we weren't unfamiliar with each other. We know how each other works.
But this scenario was unfamiliar.
Yes, exactly. And then we were managing. I was exhausted. I was home all the time. And usually Grant and I had a routine that, especially during COVID, this was important for us, that we would make sure, because we both work for ourselves, that we were out of the house at different times to each other so that we wouldn't see each other during the day.
Just to have space.
Yeah, just to have space from each other, and then we'd have something to talk about in the evening. Because if we saw each other at lunchtime, then by dinner, this would happen during COVID as well.
Yeah.
Like, what else have you got to talk about?
You need time away. You need your life.
Exactly.
And like he likes to work outside the house anyway.
Well, we both do.
Yeah.
But it's also something we choose to do because we want our home to be a space for relaxation and calm.
Yeah.
Not, I'm going to focus on work.
Yeah.
So it's making that distinction in our minds and those associations that were really important for us. And we didn't get that as much because I wasn't really working.
Yeah.
I was home all the time with Marcus because he needed feeding like every hour and a half. He was sleeping, and then I was recovering, and I was exhausted through not sleeping. And just generally the overwhelm of and shock, because giving birth the first time is a bit of a shock to your mind and your body. And
I cannot even imagine.
No, and it's fine. You won't ever have to go through that.
No. I won't have to go through that. Maybe at some point in the future.
You might watch it with a
Maybe.
If anyone is interested in a future husband, our grandmother is offering this one up. She'd like him married and having children as soon as possible.
I feel like most Indian grandparents do that right from the jump, though.
Oh yeah, I was on the shelf at 21.
According to according to grandma.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a lot. But the thing that gets you through that is this new concept and just understanding of what the word love means.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
right,
was
actually.
so that was the next question that I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Like how has your understanding of the word love changed compared to before you had a child? Because you told me that you would get to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore, and then Marcus would just do one thing cute, and you're like, oh no, I can do this forever now.
Yeah, and actually Grant made an observation a little while ago. It's like I'm feeling dreadful, and then Marcus would be feeling more dreadful, or just feeling dreadful, and then my feeling rubbish would go away, and I'm like, right, action stations, look after him. And I think that's about being a mum. So I was thinking about this recently, actually. The love I feel for Marcus is nothing like I felt for anyone. It's
everything else can fall away.
Yeah, well,
if need be, but that can't.
It's yeah. Well, that's the thing. He is my highest value.
Yeah.
Above myself.
Yeah, and the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
we're all second.
You want to let me continue?
Yeah.
It's a fierce kind of love. I know, you shake your head like, you know what? Like, obviously.
No, that's not what I'm doing.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. Yeah, it's a fierce kind of love that you don't have for anything else, because also your child they need you, and you must be there. And I think it's also the fact that I was connected to him from the very beginning. Like, I grew him in my body. I felt him before he was able to do anything by himself. Like, I saw him move under my skin. Like, he'd kick me at 3 a.m. And that hasn't changed.
Just wait until I teach him Thai boxing.
Yeah. And it's actually quite overwhelming, the strength with which you love your child. And actually, I haven't asked Grant about this, but I'm pretty sure he has a different understanding of love too. But the interesting thing I learned is that for women, I can't remember if I think it's the hippocampus. It's either hippocampus or amygdala. I think it's the hippocampus. It changes when you have a child for a woman, and you have no choice in the matter. It changes.
Maybe the amygdala, because the amygdala is fight or flight.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's to do with worry about your child. I can't remember. It's hippocampus or amygdala, and I've forgotten. I was watching the Netflix documentary on babies. It's fascinating.
Okay.
I started watching that while I was pregnant, and it was explaining about in women that changes through pregnancy and when you have your child, and you have no choice over the matter. This is why mums worry all the time.
Probably the hippocampus, because the amygdala is more fight or flight. So
yeah,
like if
it's more to do with worry.
The when the amygdala fires, it's like, right, let's go. But that's typically regulated by the prefrontal cortex, which is more logic and reason.
Mm-hmm.
But if people, for example, if they have like a traumatic childhood, the prefrontal cortex doesn't develop as well, and then whenever situations rise up, the prefrontal cortex gets bypassed. The amygdala just fires straight away, and you just jump into reaction and sort of potentially violence or something like that. So hippocampus probably.
I think it is the hippocampus. But in men, it's a choice for it to change.
Right.
So that's the difference between men and women in this specific circumstance. So that I haven't asked Grant, actually. I'd like to at one point. We'll have a conversation about it. But it is this really instinctual kind of animal love that the world could go to shit. It could just go screw itself. But if your child's okay, that's all that matters.
Okay.
It's a really fierce kind of protective love. And maybe that'll change as he gets older. I don't know, but I'm not sure. Maybe it will mature with their age, with their ability to look after themselves, be more independent. Obviously, as a teenager, I'll expect he'll want to go out. He'll be able to get himself places and, physically be in charge of his own.
And being a
body.
guy too might.
That's
as well.
Yeah, being a guy too, but also, I mean, if you've got a girl, she's gonna be able to go do things,
Yeah.
places by herself.
But I'm sure the way that you think about that would be different.
Yes,
as
it would
well.
be different, but that's slightly to do with love. I mean, I don't have a second child, so I don't know how things will change when I have a second child or a third. But right now, and I think definitely with a young child who is still very dependent on you, it is a really fierce kind of love.
Yeah. Was that immediate?
No. For some women it is. For me, so there's this thing that happens after birth where you really connect with your baby and you fall in love with them. And for me, that was on day 4. I don't remember what happened, but I remember day 4 after he was born was when I fell head over heels in love with my baby.
I wonder if that's like you're just too exhausted right after.
No, I think it's to do with the shock of birth, physical
Right.
shock of birth.
Okay.
And I'm not. There is definitely something brain, but I've read about it with other mums, and there is a point where you fall in love with your baby.
Or maybe that is the day when you get the most amount of oxytocin release.
My milk came in on day 2.
Okay.
So, was it day 2? It was the Monday. So, yeah, it was like 48 hours because you have colostrum first.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born 11:49, and then my milk came in about 10 a.m. on the Monday. So he was born on a Saturday, and then my milk came in on the Monday. So 1, 2, 3. Tuesday, probably, day 4.
Okay. So, yeah, and this leads on quite well to the next part that I wanted to talk about. Like, why did you choose a home birth over being in a hospital? And from what I understand, you had a pretty smooth birth compared to most women. What was it, 10-hour labour or something like that?
Start to finish was
because we were at
under
home.
10 hours.
Because we were at home and just like on the group WhatsApp, Grant was keeping us updated.
Yeah.
As soon as it was like all systems go, all we see on the group chat was like, Houston, we have liftoff. Of course, that would be the kind of thing that he would say.
Yeah. Yes. So first question, why did I choose a home birth? That was actually a number of reasons. So one, I got pregnant during the November lockdown, and as everyone, like, COVID stuff has only really started to go away in the last 6 months. And I was actually quite worried about being in a hospital with all the COVID things. One of my friends had actually already had home births. She'd had 3 home births, and she recommended it, and she recommended the team in Liverpool as well.
Yeah.
I had read about the different birth options when I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and I really liked the idea of being at home. And what she was saying was that one of the things that's really important about giving birth is being relaxed. And you are most relaxed when you're in your home environment, where you're somewhere familiar. And I'm not a big fan of hospitals anyway.
Me neither.
No. So, I mean, they're not really relaxing places to be.
No, they're not. And I've been in loads of them.
Yeah.
Well, not loads, but I've been in plenty of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. So it's not my favourite place to be. Also, I can't eat anything in a hospital because at that point I was more on a like ketovore, paleo, more ketovore kind of diet. So it's mostly meat with a few veggies if I felt like it.
The food in hospitals is basically not food.
Yeah, so with my allergies, with the things that I'd chosen to cut out, so we're going gluten, nuts, dairy, chickpeas free, plus I don't eat nightshades. I have potatoes occasionally, mostly meat. Like, I wouldn't be able to eat anything. So I didn't want to be there, and who knows how long I'd have to be in hospital for.
Yeah.
Then there was the COVID stuff. And I'd heard that there was really bad care because the staff were so overstretched by the number of births that were happening because, it was the COVID baby boom. There was also, from reading the stats, there was a greater risk of having an intervention, an unnecessary intervention, if I was in a hospital. And I didn't want to be forced into having an intervention.
You mean like C-section or something like that?
C-section, forceps, inductions.
Oh yeah, that stuff's terrible for the baby as well. That's just like early trauma straight right from the get-go.
Yeah, so I wanted to do this as naturally as possible to make sure that Marcus was as good as he could be from the very beginning, from preconception actually, as I could possibly do.
Just no stone unturned.
Is what can I do to optimize his health from the very beginning, because I didn't want him to develop allergies. I don't know if he's got allergies yet. I know he's got some intolerances, but I don't know if it's something he'll grow out of or he'll keep.
Yeah.
But the aim is to make sure from the very beginning I reduce that risk as much as possible, because he has a greater risk because I have allergies. Now, his dad doesn't have allergies, so it's 50-50 really. I don't know.
Well, your main allergy is nuts. That's the like pinprick of peanut, and you're dead if you don't get a.
Yeah.
That's like no
nuts
joke.
Are the worst one.
No joke. That's a really bad one. But the other ones are like serious intolerances.
Yeah, well,
like you can have those. You can have those, and you're not going to be. It's not like life.
Die, but I'm going to feel like I'm dying.
Well, yeah. Well, there's, but that's it's just going to be massively uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. So I choose not to have them. And then one of the things I'd learned, and I didn't want interventions, I didn't want epidural, because the body releases natural pain relief when you have a natural childbirth.
Right.
So I didn't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mess with it. I wanted to do it so that my body was fine. I had gas and air, which is great. That really helped.
I've had gas before. Wow.
Yeah.
Like when I broke my leg and they had to like.
Yeah, it makes you woozy. So I had gas and air in the beginning. Well, not in the beginning. This was I had already been having contractions for a good 6 hours by that point.
Yeah.
And so I'd arranged for having a pool at home. My midwife, I had 3 different midwives just through necessity at that point, but they were all lovely. And so the pool was set up. That was Grant's job, actually. And one of the things, and I was talking to another friend of mine who had a home birth, both Grant and her husband agreed that it was nice that they had a job to do. So their job was set up the pool and fill it with water, which required, actually, because my water broke sooner than the midwife was expecting, and the pool was nowhere near ready, so everyone was sped up. And actually, after my water broke, I think Marcus was born like an hour and 50 minutes later anyway.
Right.
So it was quite quick.
Yeah. So, like, what was the... Like, just before I get onto, like, what was the physical toll, like, what's your opinion? Because there's a lot of talk about sort of, like, just... Back in tribal society, there was a lot of initiation rituals. And back in tribal society, you ain't got pain relief. So childbirth that's an initiation ritual for women, I would say. What's your opinion on? Because obviously there's two. It seemed. I think this is a question later on, but there's the actual physical process of enduring that, and then there's the actual doing a good job raising the child too. So men, a lot of in typical tribal society, their initiation rituals were based around like physical tests. Like, can you be brave? Can you endure physical pain? So I think a lot of sports and martial arts and really sort of steeling your resolve to a goal that's very difficult to achieve. That's sort of like the modern equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
Although physical tests really help with that. What's your opinion on sort of the modern version of female initiation rituals? Because you chose to not sort of you chose to sort of feel as much of the pregnancy and birth process as possible. You may not have come at it from that angle,
Yeah.
but I can't see how enduring something like that hasn't sort of bolstered you, or at least taught you a massive amount about yourself and what you're actually capable of. So now thinking about it,
I don't think the birth itself, it's the actual mothering.
okay,
Because that's a marathon,
okay,
and it's a marathon that doesn't end for years.
right,
The physical side of the birth, I mean,
yeah. So what was the physical toll?
okay,
of
well,
that?
okay, so we're not gonna. It's not really okay. There is a toll, but okay. So my midwife said after the birth, she was like, "That was a lovely birth," and I remember thinking, "What on earth is she talking about? That was childbirth is really unpleasant. Like, why would anyone want to give birth? 'Cause it is. It's not. It hurts." But the thing is, and a friend told me, a friend of mine who has 4 kids, she was like, you forget the pain. And I have. It took a few months, but I forgot the pain. And I'm quite willing to do it again. And I know it's going to hurt.
Because
but
of that love.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely some biology in there. Like, the way you're wired as a woman is, like, I didn't used to get, like, gooey at babies before when Marcus was little, because I had a little baby, but now he's older. Like, I've got a couple friends who've got newborns, and I got to hold them, and I was going, oh, tiny baby.
Yeah, one thing I definitely noticed that changed about you after you became a mum is you seemed far less instantly prickly and certain respect. Yeah, 'cause I've always described you as like a scorpion that smiles, and it kind of fits because like
Yeah. I am a Scorpio.
Your zodiac sign is
It's
a
probably
scorpion.
right. Yeah.
'Cause like you're fine, 'cause scorpions are fine, but then if it's like, all right, fuck you, it's like one or the other. You just kind of switch. That's how I've kind of described you, but you definitely feel a bit more. It's not like you didn't have that compassion, but it's at the surface.
Yeah,
a lot more.
To be. It has to be.
It's very much more mellowed out because you can't just be that. You can't just be like that.
You can't do that. You can't be like that to your child. I mean, there are times where.
But you just seem a bit more meted out now in comparison. 'Cause you like it was very much like, 'cause you've always been very much opinionated.
Yes.
And this is my opinion, and prove to me why I'm wrong. I think we both have that kind of trait to an extent. But I didn't. Definitely noticed that a lot of the compassion that you have is very much more on the surface now.
Yeah.
And you just seem like you think about humanity in a greater sense. Like, you seem more aware of little kids when you're walking outside in the road. Like, you just see little children. I can see that you're seeing other humans and you're thinking about other people.
I mean, it's. I guess it's probably
not that you didn't before, but you were just in your lane.
But it's like, if you've got a yellow car, then you start seeing yellow cars everywhere.
Right.
I think it's like that as well with the noticing kids. Yeah, I mean, I noticed babies and kids all the time when I was pregnant, and now that I have Marcus, you're probably right. I think it's probably just all these hormones.
I've known you for a little bit of time.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I think it's all these hormones, I think, and also the fact that you're practicing every day, because even if Marcus is having... So one of the ways that I think about it that would get me through the tough times is that when I'm having a tough time, he's having a tougher time.
Right.
And that kind of forces you to open up again and be more compassionate
Yeah.
and sympathetic to his situation, and that you, as his mother, have to help him. You need to put aside your feelings of stress. You're pissed off. You're tired. You just had enough.
Yeah.
And you have to put it aside because they need you. And maybe you don't want to be touched. And there are times you just need 5 minutes to go to the toilet by yourself.
Yeah.
But maybe you get that, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
It depends. And you just kind of go, okay. You take a breath and you go forward. And you just keep going and do the best you can with what you've got.
Yeah. Well, that's in general, just as a principle, that's just a really good life principle for people in general. If only the politicians of the world actually caught onto that. Whole other topic. How have you found the rehabilitation process, and how have you found that the sort of Czech holistic approach has been beneficial? Because I know that it actually kind of coincided that I was going through the second year of my training with the Czech Institute while you were like just starting your rehab, and that and Marcus was going through infant development, which was part of the second year training.
Yeah.
And
yes, you got to watch it in real time.
Yeah, I know, it was definitely helpful. When I got to integrated movement science level 2. Shout out to Lee Brandon for teaching that and traumatizing us all with his rather terribly brilliant jokes. But how did you find that holistic approach to it? Because obviously one of the things that most new mothers are really concerned about is like flattening their abdominals, getting their core working again, like dealing with back pain and just getting their energy levels back up. So with the stuff we were working through, how did you find that approach was quite helpful to you?
Okay, so let's lay out what we did. So diet for me wasn't something that I necessarily needed your
No, we'd already
expertise on.
sort of talked about that.
Well, yeah, because through my own experiments, you did advise on supplements or like extra stuff.
It was more fine tuning.
Yeah.
Like this nutrient helps with the liver, and and hormones need this to be like, you need this to make hormones, so maybe bump a little bit of that, and so it was more fine tuning. Like you were right on the organic food train. Like let's leave the toxins out of the equation.
Yeah, which Grant and I had done for years anyway. And then I was eating very high fat, high protein, low to zero carb, very, very low sugar, barely any sugar. So that nutrition definitely, first of all. I mean, breastfeeding helps because breastfeeding takes a huge amount of energy from your body. Like I know of or have heard of mums who breastfeeding has like sucked them dry basically of the nutrients in their body, which it does because you've got to feed your baby in those first.
Well, Mother Nature will want your baby to survive more than you.
Yeah.
So they get your nutrients first.
Yeah. And I think having definitely nutrition first was the first and most important.
Yeah.
But also with breastfeeding, it in the very beginning, and I felt this happen, it will help your uterus contract.
Right.
So it starts bringing your insides back first. So I didn't start doing any exercise or anything until Marcus was about, I think went for a walk for the first time when he was 9 days old. Otherwise, I'd been in the house or the garden and I hadn't done anything. And then it was just walking. And then when I was ready, I started working with you. So you got the roller, and I found the roller really useful.
The foam roller.
The foam roller, you lay on it and you did really little leg lifts.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, it's just you get a foam roller that's 90 centimeters long. You lay on it longitudinally, so the one end is underneath your sacrum and the other end is at the tip of your head. And then you just lift one leg up. So before you do that, you try and imagine that there's a small string attached to your belly button, and that's being drawn gently towards your spine. So this is teaching you to activate your transverse abdominals, which are the deep abdominals that sit close to your core and attach to your spine. And they provide the foundation for your prime mover abdominals, which are the sort of six-pack oblique muscles that you look all shredded and nice and all of that sit on top of that. So you just imagine that your belly button slowly getting drawn towards the spine as if it's been attached to a string. And that is the first thing that needs to start activating in order for the abdominals to flatten. And then you activate that first, and then you slowly lift one leg up, put it down, lift the other leg up, put it down. And also laying longitudinally on the foam roller really helps to allow gravity to exert on the anterior longitudinal ligament that runs along the anterior surface of the spine and helps provide something called creep and stretch. And that helps to flatten out the spine, which can really help optimize posture and help reduce some back pain. And if needed, if the lumbar spine's a little bit flat, you can roll up a towel and put that under in kind of like a little sort of chunky noodle sort of shape. Put that under the lower back, so that increases a little bit of the curve. So we've got an optimal curve in the lumbar spine, so it's not too flat. And then if there's excess curve in the upper thoracic spine, just kind of like chest level, like if people have too much of a hunch, like which is sometimes common if the core's not activating, that can help flatten as well. So you're hitting many birds with one stone with that, and it's very, very gentle.
Yeah, and I could challenge myself as I felt able to, and then that was what I started with. And you can do it just lying on the floor as well. It's actually a Pilates exercise, which as well.
Yeah.
Just without the foam roller, you just lie on the floor, and I could do that.
The foam roller adds a little bit of a wobble too.
Yeah.
So it just depends what you feel like on the day.
Yeah. And I did, postpartum rehab hasn't been consistent because
kids.
Yeah. But the next time, I know now that I'm through this first initial shock of becoming a mum, I know the next time I have a child, I have a much clearer understanding of how I would want to do my postpartum rehab. Yeah. And it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to start earlier as well.
Yeah.
Much earlier, and exercises I can do through my own research, but also using the check stuff, because one of the things I found really useful is the wall lean.
Oh, yeah, for forward head posture.
Yeah, because when you're breastfeeding and you're co-sleeping, your posture is over your baby and you naturally become very hunched.
Yep.
So doing the wall lean actually brings your shoulders back again. And I was putting Marcus in a sling a lot because he doesn't like to nap. So everything was pulling me forward. So that just stretched everything again, which was nice.
The wall lean is where you put your head against the wall and then you raise your shoulders and your hips off the wall.
So in a diagonal.
So the only point of contact against the wall is your head, and then it's just your feet on the floor, and that activates the long cervical extensors on the back of your neck and helps pull your head back, because forward head posture is really, really easy. And if you grab a bull by the horns, you can control its body. If your head goes forward, then everything starts to just curl over. And it's also so easy to just hit one of those, I've got a couple minutes, I can just hit one of them. And you can do that a few times.
Yeah, I did it while Marcus was in the bath.
Yeah,
and I went against the bathroom door.
Yeah, just aim for around about 3 minutes of total time under tension to hit the type 1 muscle fibers, which are the primarily tonic stabilizer muscle fibers, which is what we're doing here. And with the rehabilitation process, the emphasis is, from the beginning, was always, until the core can activate, all the exercises are done supine, so the belly button is pointed towards the sky. And that's really, really key.
I mean,
because you don't want to prematurely have gravity acting on them if their core's not activated. So we want to use gravity in a constructive way. Yeah. So that's why that was always the main thing. And the wall lean's okay. You can be more. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that earlier on. But prone. Yeah. And then over time, we switched it up a bit. So as the core activates, then you just slowly get back to doing more prone stuff. And then we've started to feed in some infant development with you as well. Yeah, so the inchworms and
so we're doing the inchworm and also squats with weight, which have been helpful.
Specifically a goblet squat, but it's
now the goblet squat.
Yeah, but that was also based on what you wanted to be doing with him. I hold him in a particular sling, so he's going to be this way on my body, so he's going to be on the front of me, and I'm going to be walking with him. So
no, he's on my back.
Okay, well,
he was on my front before, now he's on my back because he's heavy.
But still,
Yeah.
a goblet squat's good, because if you can do good goblet squats and hold good posture with the weight at the front, it's easier to do it at the back. So it just made more sense to do it like that, because then you're also teaching your arms to integrate with your core as well as your legs too. So that's where we would do it. But at the same time, like, it's only like maybe 20, 30 minutes max, twice a week, something like that. It's
I
not
do it once a week.
But the point is like, none of this needs to be long or complex.
No.
And that's the key, because it needs to, because like mums don't have time. So you need a couple of things that basically, you want something that hits kind of like a root domino. If you do that, everything else falls into place.
Yeah, and
like
actually,
a wall lean, for example.
Yeah, and actually what I learned through this, so I also did a postnatal Pilates class as well when Marcus was, I think he was about 7-8 months.
Yeah.
7 months, because he wasn't crawling yet. And that in conjunction with the exercises you gave me were really helpful, because I think also one of the things I learned in that Pilates class is the first class we did was actually breathing exercises to engage your core. So what I learned was that belly button to spine, but one of the things that you miss and what happens when you're pregnant is that these lower abdominals don't get engaged. So one of the things that she was explaining was, it's you're engaging your belly button, but you're also thinking about these lower abdominals, so you're bringing them in and then you're bringing them up, and then your belly button goes to your spine, and then you hold that there, because they get lazy. Sheerly through the pregnancy, because they just go. Because of your they're stretched when your belly grows and the baby's there and growing. So that was really helpful, because then I could integrate that into doing the exercises on the roller. I could integrate that into doing the squats, into the wall leans and everything, because that's what I was forgetting. Yes, bringing belly button to spine, but it's also bringing that lower pelvis, lower abdominals, like that bit.
The lower abdominals are the abdominals that are below the belly button, and they have a separate nerve innervation than the upper abdominals.
Yeah, but it's literally it's the two lower abdominal muscles, because it's it's like, so for people, so if your belly button's here, my belly button's here, it's not just these ones, it's here.
Well, so
for any woman who's pregnant or postpartum, these ones, so you bring it in and then you bring it up, and that connecting to your spine really, because I think that was the one bit that was missing, which you wouldn't have necessarily known because you've never been pregnant. And it's
lower abdominals are definitely part of it. One of the reasons one of the best ways to train your lower abdominals is to use a blood pressure cuff, but I didn't do that straight away because it's just too technical.
Yeah, I couldn't have managed that.
Like, you're looking at a dial.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons. But that's the other good thing about the inchworm. Your lower abdominals have to work when you do it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed doing the inchworm.
And and so that was the way to get the lower abdominals in for you without you having to think using your left brain.
I think now that I know it and I've been through this first year, the next time I have a baby, I know I'll start doing those breathing exercises as soon as the baby's born.
Yeah.
And that will be the first 6 to 8 weeks. We'll be doing that, just going for walks, really gentle. After 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how my core's feeling, then I'll start doing, the roller, or doing it without the leg lifts, with or without the roller. I'll actually start doing an inchworm, but a really, really
you could do
gentle.
You can even do portions of it. So you could just do the lower abdominal portion of it, where the back just arches and then you come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can break down different sections depending on what's manageable, because again, like the gold stand, there's two different ways to approach lower abdominal training. The blood pressure cuff is more neurological integration, so that's to get them firing with your nervous system properly. And the best way to train them and get them really, really bloody powerful is a great way is just sort of wrapping over that Bosu ball and then scissoring your legs, or doing what's also part of the infant development stage called navel radiation, where you're over the lower up over the Bosu ball, and you're just balancing, and then you're just flailing your arms about like
Yeah.
a kid. That's that's insanely tough.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same
doing that.
time,
Yeah.
how much time do you have? What's manageable? Do you have the left brain capacity based on sleep to sort of, all right, I need to do this for this amount of time, 3 to 5 minutes total time on attention. Sometimes you need to kind of gauge it, but that's where like all of these different things can come in based on. So as if it's easy, as you found, sometimes just doing these breathing exercises is just the perfect thing right now. Then it's like, actually, I want to do a little bit more. Right, let's just knock out an inchworm, and then it's
that's the thing.
Different things depend. Like, there's all these different things that you can use depending on what is manageable in the moment.
Well, and I think that's also the thing about being a mum, is that when you have energy, do it. If you don't have energy, don't do it. Because one of the things I found that was quite difficult to manage, and that I still have to be very mindful and cognizant of, is that I'm not going to get a full night's sleep. So I can't go to the gym and really push myself in a workout because I'm not going to get that recovery time. Yeah. Like, not before. Like, if before I had a child, before it was any of this, I could really, like, I could go for a really long run. I could do weights if I wanted to. I could really push myself. And then I know that I would sleep the next 2 nights and recover. And even if I was really sore and achy the next day, it's fine, because I could just have a bath, whatever, eat as much as I wanted. That doesn't happen now. So my workouts are far more gentle, because I know I need to survive waking up at least once, but more likely 2 or 3 times for the following few nights.
This is where the Czech principle of work in versus work out comes in. Because doctor movement is doctor movement. We call it doctor movement for a reason. It's not doctor exercise. We can use it. We can use exercises in a workout format, but it's called doctor movement. We want to move. And based on what our energy levels are like, maybe we need to work in, which means that we use movement in a way where when we finish, we feel like we got more energy than when we started. Yeah. We use it like in a we get what's known as a therapeutic dose, as Paul Check would say. And that's what I've been, that's what I was, for lack of a better, this sounds a bit more like a clinical term, prescribing. This is what I was suggesting. So, like, each time that you did like those inchworms or a wall lean, you got the stimulation, but it's not like, oh, I'm exhausted now. Because that's a big issue with postpartum rehabilitation. Like, some new mums will just go to a personal trainer, and this is one of the problems with just blank, non-holistically informed training methods. It's like, right, new mum, right, let's get you doing box jumps and push-ups and all this shit, and like there's stages for these things. Like, right, okay, first you've just done one of the hardest things any human being can actually put their body through, probably. You're exhausted, you're not getting sleep. How are we going to use movement? We need to use it in a therapeutic dose. What's the first thing? Right, we need to just think about posture. Let's think about forward head posture. Let's get the core activated optimally. Let's think about your nutrition. Let's think about the basic foundation health principles. Sleep, nutrition, hydration. All right, we're not going to get sleep. So let's think about nutrition and hydration. What can we do? And breathing, thinking, and movement. Those are the yang principles. So sleep, nutrition, hydration, those are the 3 yin principles. So how can we use breathing in an optimal way? That's where like that Pilates stuff comes in. Like, we've got loads of that in the Czech system anyway, because we're multidisciplinary, so we want to include all of this, all of the goodness from all of the other specialists too. Thinking. Let's get thinking optimized. Like, obviously hormone levels are not going to be optimal, so it's going to be easier for negative catastrophizing to come in. Definitely. So how are they getting the support that they need? What's anxiety and depression like? How do they understand the mechanisms of what anxiety and depression is like? How are what simple things can be put in place for them to go to if there's sort of those moments to come in? And movement. Let's use movement in a therapeutic way and do it specifically. So going through these stages: flexibility, stability, strength, and then power. or phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3,
Mhm.
we need to get the core activated properly. So that's where it's like, right, let's keep everything supine, belly button to the sky. Let's get the core activated properly. Let's get rid of inflammatory foods. Let's just all of these things, all these tiny little 1% changes that are manageable, that don't add loads of drain to the. Let's just put these in place because sleep's kind of off the table. So what other things can we put in place to just reduce the load as much as possible? There's going to be a load there, point blank.
Yeah.
But how can we reduce it generally?
Yeah. I mean,
and structure it properly.
I think also on the sleep front, so one of the things is that rest when you can. Because yes, and there are some ways you feel like you're losing your life, because when your baby's sleeping is the only time you kind of get a mental break. But also, if you need a nap, take a nap, or just lie down with your baby or next to your baby and just rest if you need to. Like, put your phone away. I know I find that difficult sometimes, especially when it's like you've got messages that you want to reply to, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to manage this with another baby, but you make it work. That's what I've heard from mums with multiple children. You just make it work and you find a new way to do things, and but if you need a rest, take a rest, and don't force yourself to do more than you're physically able to do. But when you have energy and you feel like using it, use it, because you never know if it's going to go. You're not going to have it tomorrow, or you're just going to have your baby or toddler cooperate when you've got energy. So yeah, my husband doesn't always think it's the right thing, but for me, I know it's the right thing I need to do, because it helps me mentally. If I feel I'm being productive doing my own project when I have energy, then when I'm tired, or when Marcus needs me more, I can just leave it and go, well, I did loads the other day, that's fine. I can leave it and I'll pick it up when Marcus doesn't need me at that moment.
You're also naturally quite ambitious.
Yes, it is good and bad at the same time.
You don't like to not do stuff.
No.
So that's another.
I do put undue stress on myself to do things, but
that's another thing that you're having to deal with.
Yeah, and that was challenging in the first year, because so one of the things you find when you're a mum is that you're like, what have I done today? I have done nothing. But actually,
you've done the most important thing,
which is what Grant said to me. He was like, well, Marcus is alive and healthy and well, so I don't
and non-traumatized.
And he was like, I wouldn't call that nothing. So I'm like, so you kind of, it takes a while to go, okay, yes, but the standards of how you used to measure the success of your day is now completely different.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is about the current societal conversation, because obviously, like, where we're a current societal conversation in terms of like women is like a lot of women are feeling like, right, we need to be independent, I need to do this, I need to do that. There's a lot, to an extent, there's a big sort of energetic I can't even say it. Masculinization of women energetically at the moment, which in itself is not a bad thing, because masculine energy is just to be doing fire, yang, which everyone needs a certain balance of yang and yin. However, too much fire burns the system out.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if it gets a little bit squirrely in terms of, as we're talking about with stages of consciousness, where no, it's not okay for women to just be a mum and keep the kid alive, make sure that the kid's not traumatized by loving them effectively, and let that be just revered to the degree that it should be, because how many of the world's population are completely traumatized up to their eyeballs, and they're having to deal with that now as a result of improper parenting. When that gets thrown into the mix, then we have more opportunity for, going back to the foundation health principles, suboptimal thinking. So, he's right. And I was just gonna, like, one of the things that I wanted to sort of touch on is why do you think, like, now that you're a mum, like, what do you think is the reason that some women have an aversion to being a mum, or they don't like the idea of having kids?
I don't know.
Because some of the, like, because
I think some they like their career and they like their independence.
and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. I'm just curious.
I don't know exactly. I think it depends on different women and their experiences in life
Right.
and their different aims for their life. I think for some, their career is more important, and perhaps they haven't found a good enough man they would be willing to sacrifice for or give up, or a man who they would even consider wanting
It's like,
to
yeah,
be
I'd
the
date
father
you,
of their
but
child.
I ain't having a kid with you.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. That's tying you to that person for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So perhaps these women who don't want to have children are those high achieving, hyper intelligent, go getter people, women who hey, they haven't found a man that they want to have a baby with. I think that it's really important. It's like you wouldn't have a baby with just anyone.
Well,
Not if
that
you're
can
building
make
a
or
family.
break the health of that child.
Yeah. So I think, it probably, I'm guessing, 'cause I know a couple of my friends aren't that interested in having children.
Yeah, which doesn't make them bad people
No.
at all. It's just
No, and some women just don't necessarily want to have children. They're just not that interested, or they haven't had children because haven't found the right man, and then they get too old, perhaps. And also now that you can throw yourself into your career, I know that when you get out of uni, it's hard to meet someone. That's what my friends are telling me.
Right.
Because
it's not hard to.
You don't.
It's not hard to meet people. It's harder to meet optimal people.
No, but it's different at uni because there's so many people in such a small space.
Yeah, but most people in uni are just dating.
Not necessarily. I met Grant at uni.
Yeah, well,
and then we ended up getting married.
The way that I
know a lot of people who got married from uni.
The way that I kind of view things at the moment is like it's very easy to meet people, but it's not as easy to meet optimal people that are sort of emotionally prepared to endure something long term. Because one of the things about social media and technology is just in general, when people have a lower attention span, you have a lower attention span, and any kind of long-lasting relationship requires a longer attention span.
That's so interesting way
because
to put it.
You're gonna have peaks and valleys. You're gonna have a rise and fall, and the sort of romanticism and dopamine hit's gonna fade away because you're gonna get used to someone.
Well, it takes 1.5 to 2 years for the rose-tinted glasses to come off.
So you're gonna have to be able to connect. If we're gonna be more holistic and talk about the chakra system, like you got the first, second, and third chakras, like safety and security, sort of sex and procreation and willpower, get paid, get laid type of thing. Fourth chakra is giving and receiving love. Like when energy gets up to the fourth, then you're actually concerned about the intangible aspects of the individual, the soulful existence of that person. So when someone's energy within themselves goes up to that level, they're not just concerned about what do you look like. Everyone needs to have some kind of sexual attraction to the individual that gets them in the door. But if their energy's up to that level, they're instantly thinking about, well, what's this person's heart like? Because that's the stuff that's going to stay. That's going to keep you there. But a lot of social media is only in those first three, and if people are just thinking about that and they're constantly turning over people and they're not actually having the experience within themselves to actually rise up to that level, they're just not in the habit, and they're not in the habit to actually be in that place, and there's just less people doing that.
Yeah.
So it's easy to meet people, but it's not as easy to meet people that want that
So
to that extent.
so actually, what I've found with the people I know,
But it's not impossible.
is that actually going somewhere to an activity class or something is actually the best place to meet someone.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So going there, you're not going there to date necessarily, and I think
That's the wrong way to go. Go there 'cause you enjoy it, and maybe 'cause you enjoy doing the thing.
yes, but also you're meeting someone on an equal playing field almost, and you get to know them doing something, because that's one of the things that's really important in a relationship, is that to do something with them, because you want to see
Yeah.
how that person faces challenges and how they deal with those challenges and move forward, and then work with them. So I met Grant at the ballroom dancing club at university,
Yeah.
and I know so many people who actually met there and then ended up getting married and having kids,
Yeah.
because they worked together on something. You meet people of a similar mindset as well.
And it's hard.
Well, yeah,
So-
but if you're doing it socially, it has levels of difficulty.
Depending
Because there's
on-
social
yeah.
dancing and then there's competitive dancing, and it depending on what you wanted to do,
Yeah.
it's different. But most of the people I know who got married were social dancers.
Yeah.
They're not competitive dancers. I mean, there are plenty of competitive dancers who are in relationships or get married, but the ones I know from uni or Grant's undergrad uni, a lot of his friends did. They ended up dancing together, or they met at the club and then they got married. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing. You meet, and this is why I said, well, it's harder when you're not at uni, because when you're at uni, there is, and if anyone's been to uni, you've experienced it, there's a lot of people to talk to. You're always mixing with new people. There's societies you can join, clubs you can join. There's always stuff to do. When you go out into
Yeah.
the working world, you don't have as much time because you're always working. And if you're
Yeah.
a freelance, you don't meet as many people. Or if you're working in a corporate environment, you're around your corporate colleagues a lot. Then if you're going to meet people, it's not necessarily going to a class. You're going out to the pub. You're going out to a bar. And it's a different social environment. It's
Yeah.
going to a pub or a bar, well, more a bar or a club. It's more hookup culture. You're not going to meet your future wife or husband. You're going to party. And that's different to going to a club to learn something, going to a
Yeah.
class to learn something. And when you're learning together, I find as a couple, you do grow stronger, because you are, and it gives you something to talk about. You're learning how the other person learns, which is quite important and useful in a relationship, because you get to understand how they work.
Yeah.
And then when you have conflict, then you have a better understanding of how to communicate with them. Or you can, because you've problem solved in other areas, you can then learn how to problem solve together on this specific relationship problem or conflict.
Yeah. It's also at any kind of activity, providing you're there because you actually like the activity as well. Because like some people just go there because they don't give a shit about the activity. They just want to meet people, and then they just seem a bit weird.
No, that happens at ballroom dancing. Most of the boys go to ballroom dancing to meet girls.
Yeah, I know,
and
but
then they end up liking the dancing.
Yeah, I know, but in my experience, like being at dance, and like it wasn't ballroom. I mean, most of it was street styles and stuff like that. But in my
I think
experience,
it's different when it's couple dancing and individual dancing as well.
It is
Because in
definitely-
ballroom, you kind of have to dance with another person.
no, it's definitely different. But I'm just speaking to what I've experienced. Most of the people there, like obviously there's that side of it, but most of them are there because they just like the activity first. So because you just like the activity first, when you do interact with people, it's more like on a, oh, what's your name? What's good? Like, what you doing?
That's the whole point.
But because of that, because you build that sort of level friendship thing, it starts from that friend place.
Yeah.
And that's where that's the foundation that it needs to build from. Because if you don't have that, it's not gonna.
You need to be friends with your
you have
boyfriend,
to. You have to be
girlfriend,
friends
future
first.
husband, wife.
You have to be friends first, and then
Well,
But what
You
we
need
could
to
say
become
that has
friends.
to be there.
you need to be.
It has to be
Friendly,
there. Both
yeah.
of them have to be there. Maybe one comes before the other, but both of them have to be there for
Yeah.
it to last.
Yeah. The
One can
friendship is
start.
what's going to last the longest.
Yeah, But the chances are, like, unless it's like some just instantaneous thing, like you just randomly see someone at class, and then to use Jungian psychology, you just have just you, one has an anima projection, the other one has an animus projection. You just kind of
You want to jump their bones.
magnetize it towards each other. Hopefully that doesn't turn into a terrible situation where it just gets awkward at class. But
yeah, but I mean,
it can work. But the point is, at some point, all the veils have to drop, and you have to just be friends with each other.
That's life. That's a relationship. But
yeah. So, but because you have that, with you and Grant have that, that's definitely provided a really strong foundation, not just for both of you, but a really, really strong, energetic sense of security for Marcus.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people, and a lot of my friends, and I know that we didn't have this either, we didn't have the most optimal sort of sense of just emotional and energetic security when we were growing up, from the sort of environment that we had, which I'm not using this as an opportunity to bash anyone. Parents do the best that they can with the knowledge that they have. But it's more optimal if that is really, really set, and the child can energetically sense, oh, my parents actually really like each other. It's not just like they're together. It's like, oh, they actually really like each other as well.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, I think, well, I wouldn't have had a child with Grant if I didn't like him. And if we argued all the time, it would just have been a no. Well, we wouldn't have been together that long.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we grew up with, that's just not something that we would want to we would compromise on.
Yeah. So, and then one other thing, I mean, discussing with how we want to raise Marcus, I mean, it adapts, it changes, and we grow, and we go, okay, well, so one of the things we've been talking about is when Grant and I disagree on something, what do we do, and how do we show Marcus that everything is fine? Yeah. So what we've decided is that, well, we're still developing how we're going to argue as well, because it's going to happen. And it usually happens about something stupid, but it's how do you resolve it, and also showing Marcus that we can resolve it.
You're both really stubborn.
Yeah. We're both very stubborn. But we both want a resolution as well, so it's how.
But you're both really rational too, which helps.
Yeah, but you don't always stay rational in an argument, Jacob.
I know, but you can utilise it because you want to, because you're aiming for a resolution.
Not always, and you're not always aiming for a resolution during an argument, Jacob.
All right. Okay.
That's what an argument is. But we have discussed that, and we want to aim to be more rational, but also to show Marcus, to model for him and future siblings, this is how Mummy and Daddy argue. Yes, they are arguing. Yes, they disagree, but we can do it in a respectful or productive way. And then if you have an argument, then you can take a break, and then you come to a resolution. So it's always showing that there is a solution and a resolution at the end, and that you make up, but also how you can be respectful to each other in the middle of an argument, or when you're in a break. You don't have to hold the grudge.
Yeah, key word you said there, like respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is something that a lot of people miss when they have disagreements. Like, it just turns nasty.
Well, I think a lot of the time, I mean, when you have an argument with someone, often it becomes much more emotional, and that emotional response is not a rational, it's not a top right brain kind of, I know what I'm saying. It's a emotional reaction because of whatever you've experienced in life. And
call back to the amygdala reference we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not going to be respectful. And I think one of the things that it highlights, and one of the things that as a parent it forces you to look at, is, well, what's causing my emotional response?
Yep.
And then forcing you to address that and then work through it, because you want to not have your child do the same thing, or you want to show them that you can work through emotional or mental or any sort of problems, challenges you've had, and then they can solve it. Because I think your child, I mean, we're seeing it already, even though he's really small, is that he started copying.
Yeah.
And he's doing things, so he'll want to put things away exactly where they came from. Because this idea of order, he's really getting into this sensitive period for order. And he's going to do it. And then I've got other friends who said, yeah, it's really interesting. Your child will show you how you act, because they will then say it back to you or do it back to you. And you're thinking, where on earth did they learn that from? And then they learn it from you. Yeah, exactly.
I've like, as you know, like, I write a lot, so I've had like a bunch of scribbles. Like, I've got this note section in my computer, and I just scribble a bunch of stuff down. And like, one of the things that I noted down is, and I want to get your opinion on this, because obviously you'd have way more insight than I would, is that children are a mirror, and sometimes some people can't handle what they see in that mirror. Because, as you said, like, children will reflect back to you what you are.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had full experience of this yet, because Marcus is only 18 months. But from what I've heard from friends, yeah. And it does happen. And you do question and go, where did he learn that? Oh, goodness. From me. Okay, I need to check that and sort that out in myself. Whether that be a physical habit, just maybe... I don't even know. Like, a simple example would be if you lick the knife.
Right.
Like, was it Grant was, I think we were cutting something and he licked the knife, and I was like, oh, don't do that. I don't think we should do that in front of Marcus, because he's going to start learning to do that. And what we want to start teaching him about knife safety. I mean, he doesn't use knives. He has like a little toddler knife that is rounded and has no edge on it at all. But he wants to put it in his mouth. So we're already from now going, no. Knives don't go in the mouth. It's sharp. It'll cut you. Also, we're not going to swallow tablets in front of him, because what if he picks a stone up and tries to swallow it, because mummy and daddy swallow little
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. I don't know what he'll do with me and show me my actions yet. He's not quite at that stage. But I'm sure at some point he will show me something I do that I will go, oh, goodness. I don't like that.
There's a quote, actually. I'm just going to pull it up here. Like, Ben Affleck actually said. He said it... Where is it? I just thought it was just so profound and really, really beautiful. And I want to get your opinion on it. He said, I think the most important literal or metaphorical autobiography anybody could ever write is written on the hearts of their children.
Let me read that.
So that was a quote from speech, so it's not like written.
Yeah. Heart of their children.
So I think the most important literal or metaphorical autobiography anybody could ever write is written on the hearts of their children. Because one of the things that he was talking about in that interview was the thing that he, like, the moment where he gave up alcohol. Because the moment was when he realized, he felt the pain of realizing it just affected his kids. And he was just like, all right, no more. And he quit instantly. And he said that was that sort of that for anyone else dealing with that would be his secret for that. You need to feel enough pain, and for him, the pain that was enough was for it to impact his children. But I just thought that was a good way of putting it there, because it seemed like he'd oriented himself in the most optimal way when you're in that role, which is they need to be okay. What do I need to do to make sure that they're okay? And as you said, the world kind of gets put second. It's not like it's not important, but it's put in its proper order, so to speak.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think, because Marcus is still quite small. Yes, there are some reflections, but it's a different. I never thought
His
about
kid.
it.
I mean, Ben was talking about his kids who are like quite grown up at the moment. Already,
Yeah.
so.
I think. Yeah, it probably is correct. It probably is. I mean, I only have one experience of one child. I only have one child, and I guess.
Well, I
I mean,
the
the fact he wants me to be around is a good thing.
well, the thought of like, what would it be like if my kid hates me?
Yeah.
That I can't imagine that.
Well, it hadn't even crossed my mind.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's not even a thought for me.
What do you think? What do you think of this statement? And do you think it's true? I'm not reading this out saying that I think it's true, but I wanted to use it as a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
It takes very little effort to have a child and be a mum compared to having a child and being a good and healthy mum. The effort is enormous on both sides, but to do the job well, so the child doesn't have trauma, is probably the hardest job there is.
Let me read it. I'm getting tired, so I just need to see.
I guess with this, it's to just discuss the distinction between just being a mum and being a good one.
Oh, I think it depends what you mean by good.
What
What's
do you
the
think?
definition
What
of
do you
good?
think is a good?
Well, okay,
definition of a
so
good?
if we're thinking about, so giving birth is actually this easy part. Is the
Right.
it lasts for however many hours or minutes, and then it's over.
Yeah.
You are then labelled mum.
Yeah.
Because you have a child. I can't remember where I saw this already. It was kind of the idea of having earned the title of mum, and you can't give it to someone who hasn't earned it. And I think your child tells you that. I mean, if you see in movies, if there's like an adopted child,
Right.
they're not going to call the woman mum or the man dad until they are ready to.
Yeah.
It's like, it's quite a personal,
Deliberate.
yeah, and deliberate.
You have to earn that from me.
Yeah.
Show me.
Yeah. So, and then you think, well, okay, what is a good mum? There are aspects to it as well, because there are the necessary things a child needs to literally and physically survive. And then there's the emotional, mental, holistic,
Inner intangible life. Of the
of your
individual.
child. I think every mum wants to be a good mum, meaning that their child is happy, healthy, looked after and loved. They have a place to live, they have food and comfort. But I think, it really depends on your upbringing as well. It depends on what you are like as a person, and whether you in yourself are determined to make yourself better, a better person, in order to help your child develop and fulfill or explore. It's not even fulfill, it's explore their potential, I think, because they'll decide what they want to achieve in their life ultimately. Because one of the things I think that can be forgotten is that children have their own views on things. No matter how small they are, they have their own views.
They have their own souls. They're here for their own purpose.
Yeah. And that will come to being, it will come to view at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So, look at this again. I think being a healthy mum, that's important, because it's the kind of put your gas mask on before you put your child's gas mask on, or air mask.
You have to be able to
you
take
need
care
to
of
look
them.
after yourself. You need to be okay in yourself, and I think that's important. I think that's incredibly important. For humans in general, because then
Yeah.
you're happy in yourself.
That's that check principle: I, then we, and then all. Obviously, the I is never fully done;
Mm.
it's always ongoing. But
And I think that's also the hard bit with having a baby in the beginning, is because that I becomes second to we or you
yeah,
with a baby, and it is a necessary part of looking after a newborn and looking after a very young baby.
it needs to come back round to
Yeah.
it at some point, though.
And yeah, and I think it's that process during that first year where you start bringing it round. And I think if you are breastfeeding, you're not using formula or anything else, that makes it harder, because you are physically required, if you're not pumping, and even if you are pumping, that's hard work.
Yeah,
That's really hard work. It requires you much more physically to be present. You can't give that away, that job, to someone else to look after your child.
So one of the things that's very, very clear is like you're very much thinking about what would be best for him.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't do that. So what aspects of our childhood, and maybe like on Grant's side too, are you adamant are not going to be repeated for Marcus? Because that's part of like, what can I do to create the best environment for him? I know that you guys have had that conversation, because we talked about this before. But like, obviously we don't need to go into details or things like that, but we can talk generally about certain things.
Well, how about I talk about it more in the positive?
Yeah. No, I don't mean like veil it in a negative slant, but I'm talking.
So I think what I was determined to do was that Grant and I both wanted to be present.
Yeah.
So Grant's parents divorced when he was quite young, so his dad hasn't been in the picture at all throughout his adolescence or adulthood. So that was one thing. We both wanted to be present and involved in our child's life from the beginning, and we wanted to help them grow and teach them and get them involved in life and show them how interesting life can be and how it could be an adventure. So we didn't want him to feel we don't want him to feel inhibited by limitations that are put in front of him or obstacles that are put in front of him.
Yeah.
I mean, he may have physical limitations to do something, but then if you've got those physical limitations or there's something in your path, well, how do we go over, under, or through it? It's how do we develop those problem-solving skills in him? And I mean, he naturally has them. I think children naturally have them, and it's allowing them to flourish rather than taking them away through however society thinks that children should be learning or developing. So that was one thing. And then as a mum, I wanted to make sure that, so I was really interested in the Montessori principle of doing things, which is basically you watch and observe your child and you give them choices and freedom within safe boundaries. So it's not that you just go leave your child. It's, here's a safe space in which everything is accessible. So a physically safe space. Plug sockets are away.
Soft flooring, so like
no, it's not necessarily about that. It's like,
at a certain
yes, there
point,
might be dangers, like a corner, and we're going to move them away when he's really unable, but then as he starts to get more physically capable, we'll bring them back out and we'll teach them how to be careful and how to manage it. So, giving him proper cutlery. So we gave him toddler cutlery from the very beginning.
Yeah, well,
much.
I mean, like babies, they'll need like soft flooring so they can actually go through the infant development cycle, for example.
That.
Depending on the age.
Yeah. So, when he was crawling, putting a rug out or something, so that when he fell over, it would break his fall rather than, him crush his skull or something. Yeah, that. But it wasn't to take away the danger. It was to manage the danger so that he could learn and then get better. So we taught him to climb stairs. We don't have a stair gate at the bottom of the stairs. We have it at the top so that he can run between the rooms on the first floor and he doesn't fall down the stairs.
Yeah.
But we don't have one at the bottom. So we taught him to climb up and down the stairs quite early. He could climb up and down the stairs before he could walk. and he doesn't go up the stairs without mum or dad. And we've taught him that. So he'll wait there, or he might start climbing the first few stairs, but he does know how to climb down.
Yeah.
He actually usually falls from the last step rather than the middle, actually. And it's usually when he's starting to want to climb like 1 foot at a time. So it's when he does that and doesn't quite catch himself.
Yeah, well, that will the one step at a time will probably coincide with being able to actually have good gait and a bit more of a sort of rotation pattern in the gait cycle.
Yeah, it's coming.
That takes a while.
Yeah, no, it's coming.
It takes 7 years for that whole thing to complete fully.
Yeah.
But
No, by 2 he'll be able to go up holding the banister for sure.
yeah.
But then, okay, so being a good mum, what did I want? So, yeah, we wanted to be present. We wanted to limit the screens. We wanted him to play outside and go outside as much as possible. So to do that, actually, I have had to change myself. So this morning, mum brought me my Christmas birthday present, which is a pair of wellies.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one that can be a bit squeamish going outside in the cold. So I am reducing the barriers
Really?
for me
Yeah.
to get outside. So Dad got me a toddler carrier, which is also a baby carrier that I can use for the next baby. So I can put him on my back and take him out without the pram, which makes my life easier because I've got less to carry. I've got, put on warm clothes. I've got some wellies now. So going out when it's a bit more wet and muddy is fine because I know I'm not going to get, he's got wellies, but I didn't have wellies.
Yeah.
So now I can join him in jumping in the muddy puddles, which is what he wants, rather than standing at the outskirts.
Yeah.
I can help him enjoy it a bit. Or I can kind of, because he gets a bit nervous sometimes, or he'll spend the first half an hour watching, and then he's okay. So now I can join in a bit more and not worry about my clothes, or have specific clothes that I don't mind getting muddy and dirty.
Yeah.
Or having some waterproofs. That's my next acquisition at some point. Buying some waterproof trousers. Because I've kitted him out, so I just need to make sure I'm kitted out to join in. What else?
I think alcohol was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really drink anymore because I'm either pregnant or breastfeeding. And also, I can't co-sleep if I'm drinking. So
It's not demonizing it. It's just not having the sort of excess use of it, shall we say.
So, I mean, that was something I knew that I didn't want in a husband or a boyfriend, is someone who drank all the time. So it's kind of a challenge I put Grant through in our very early days of our relationship. So I didn't want to be with someone who couldn't handle their alcohol.
Yeah.
And who didn't get drunk all the time. So Grant doesn't get drunk that much anymore. When we were at uni, obviously,
I've never seen him drunk.
I have. And hungover.
But then again, like some people when they get drunk, they just get really, really happy and positive. Some people get like dark and depressed and all that. I'm like the complete light, happy, become a benevolent social terrorist type. Some people get really dark and depressed, and some people get violent. Those are the sort of like the few.
Yeah.
So we'll just talk for like just 10 minutes or something, and then but basically you've kind of like you've kitted Marcus out for sort of just exploring the world, and you're imbuing him with that freedom to explore.
Yeah, and
without
providing the tools and
which leads me on to the last part that I wanted to talk about, which was avoiding state school and thinking more about like homeschooling. As well. Like, what are your? Because that's quite a decision. I don't know whether you made that decision fully yet, but I can actually kind of understand avoiding state school, because I went to state school and it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And it's very set in its ways.
Yeah. So
and beats out your creativity.
So Grant and I work very differently. I was very good at school, and I enjoyed school.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I hated it.
I have a personality that works. I am very good at following.
Well, just tell
rules.
everyone what you do for your job.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was a private tutor before. So yeah, I was good at school.
I hated school. I think Grant was the same.
No, he didn't hate it. He just he did everything far too quickly, and then would go off and do whatever he wanted,
which the teachers didn't want him to do.
No, Grant was the one who was smart enough to make sure he did just enough to stay in the top set. So he'd just get in by 1 point,
It's almost
even though he could have been top of the class.
it's almost like, all right, if I do this, will you leave me alone? All right, I'm just going to do this. Right, you're leaving me alone now. I'm going to do what I want.
It wasn't even leave me alone. It was like, I'll do the bare minimum and now I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
Or I'll do what I want and I'll do the bare minimum to stay where I want to stay, but not the extra because I don't need to put in that effort. So we knew that certain schools we didn't want to send Marcus to a school that would force him into a bubble, but also through, teaching students, through our experiences of university, through our experiences of different schools. The school system is Victorian. It's not meant to really push your child to become a human.
Oh no, it's designed to make factory workers.
Yeah, and that's how it was designed anyway in the Victorian era during the Industrial Revolution. So so with that, we knew they weren't going to state school. We were thinking about private schools. We were looking at different types of private schools. So I went to an international school. I quite liked that. Grant went to school in Zimbabwe, so we joked around the idea of maybe him going to boarding school in Africa. We have found...
Grant looks British, white as paper, but he grew up in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, he's Zimbabwean.
Yeah.
We've also seen... we like Montessori schools. There are forest schools for the younger ones. There is a school, and I've completely forgotten what it's called now, run by a woman who trained at the Ayn Rand Institute, who runs a school, which I really liked how she runs her school. I'll try and remember and I'll give it to you for show notes. Then there is a school, and I think it's not in Somerset, near Bury St Edmunds, I think it is. Somewhere near there, where actually the school has no rules and you don't have to attend class. So, and the kids, it's a boarding school as well if the kids want to board. And we've considered that one because then we were looking at homeschooling as well, because we could provide that environment at home.
Yeah.
And then just allowing our kids to delve into whatever they wanted. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I don't know because I don't need to.
Seems like you're still gathering info.
Yeah, I mean, we're leaning towards homeschool.
Or maybe that's the bulk, and then you supplement with other places.
I don't know what we're going to do.
Or it's a combo or something like that.
It will probably end up being some sort of combination of something.
But actual school, not like Victorian school.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it school. Just life.
Learning. Like actual learning.
Yeah, just life.
There's actually a Steiner school really close to us. There's one in, the David Lloyd's near us. There's one near there.
It's not near me, but...
Well, there's actually a Steiner school.
Oh, okay.
There, so, like, if you wanted to...
Well, he's not going to go to school here, then.
No, I don't know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, it's a place that you can go and talk to people.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, well,
because it's literally there. It's literally, like, a couple miles away.
We're quite a few years away, for now, anyway.
Yeah.
Because it will be nursery first. And then, I mean, he's not even 2 yet.
Yeah, there's obviously there's different places. But one of the things that does kind of separate a Steiner school is like there's a lot of emphasis about a spiritual connection, but not a dogmatic spiritual connection. It's about giving each individual child the tools to find their own one.
Yeah.
I mean that's a whole like topic, but there's loads of different places that have lots of really, really crucial things to add to the conversation of how do we educate a child properly. But I think school is a big thing that can either add a load of extra shit to the individual and what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and then get over later in life.
Yeah.
Or it can be magic for them and be an absolute sort of launch pad for the rest of their life. And I think it seems very clear that you want to make sure that it's a launch pad for him.
Yeah.
As opposed to a just trauma bucket.
Yeah. And well, it wouldn't be a trauma bucket for him at all, but...
Well, no, but... or at least some...
We just want... We want him to be...
Because it can be a trauma bucket for some people, depending on their experience as well.
Well, even if he had to go to school, we know that we would have given him the tools and we would support him in being able to assert himself and his views, and it would be teaching him that adults can have the wrong opinion, can be wrong as well, and give him the strength as a young child to say no to an adult. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, but also again, like, you know, 'cause you can you can put your boundaries in in place, and you can be respectful. So and say no, but being able to say no is very important, and not just feel like this teacher's like this deity that I must bow to all the time. But at the same time, they might have some really important information for me to listen. Like, I probably should listen to as well. Right, we've been yapping for a little while, so I think this would be a good sort of neat little point to tie the bow up. Thanks for sitting down and
No problem.
chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Episode 1 kind of fits that it's with you.
Cool.
Partly because it was just the one that I could schedule first, and I actually
Thanks.
forgot until you reminded me. But it just worked out quite well. But I definitely learnt a lot, because these questions were ones that I was actually just curious about your opinion about. And to be honest, I think that's just the best way for podcasts anyway. What am I interested about with this person? And let me just ask them, and then let them answer the questions. So, cool. Now I'm hungry, so
Yeah, I think Archie's cooking anyway.
yeah, let's go get munch. All right.